Welcome to this week's lessons on modules. We'll cover packages after this small lecture. In order to understand a little bit more about modules, I'm going to create here on my desktop, and this is in the VM that has been provided to you. You have a very similar one. If I create here a new folder, I'm going to call it math, for example, and here's what I'm going to put inside some Python files that I want to reuse. They contain logic that I want to reuse. So I'm going to open my Anaconda navigator, and once it opens, I'm going to create a function that is going to contain some simple logic that I'm going to use as an example of what a module looks like. So now I'm here on Anaconda. I'm going to launch the Jupyter Notebooks. Okay. And I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and then math is there, right? In this case, I'm going to just go into the math folder, and I'm going to click New, Python 2 file, right? Now here, I'm going to create a very small function. For example, def, let's say multiply, and it's going to take two arguments, A and B, and then it's going to return A times B. Okay, again, it's pretty simple. I can even test it right here and say print multiply 2, 3, and if I run that, I'm going to see the result right there. Okay, in this case, I just want to reuse this function, so I'm not going to specify any print command. But once I'm done with this, I'm going to click on File, and up until this point, we have been downloading as a Python notebook, but in this case, I'm going to download it as a Python file in itself. In this case, I'm not going to open it. I'm just going to save it, save the file. So I'm going to click OK. And by default, this saves to the download folder. I can access here at the top right of the browser. If I click on this little folder right here, it's going to open it up. And I have it right here. I'm going to rename this, instead of untitled, I'm going to rename it to, let's say, operations, or like as in math operation. And now I have there a Python file, right? And it has a function inside of it. If I were to right click it and open it with any kind of text editor like gedit, I could look at it, I could see it. Notice that some additional lines were added automatically by the Jupyter Notebook, and that's fine. But my function is there, right? So now the question is, how do I use this, right? So let's say I go to this folder right here, math. I'm going to, this was in the downloads, and I want to actually move it. So I'm going to right click, cut, and go to my desktop, and under math, I'm going to paste it right there, right? So now I put it exactly where I want it to be. So let's say I'm creating this set of reusable functions here, and I'm only going to use one file for this example, but it's going to be on the folder where I want it to be, right? This obviously is the Python notebook that I'm working with. So the question again is, if I'm looking at this untitled notebook, which I have here on another tab, I'm going to, because I moved this one, I'm actually going to close this one, and I'm going to delete this one, right? So I only have my Python file for the multiply function, and I'm going to create a new Python notebook on that directory, right? So you can see if I go back to the desktop here, it's right here. I don't have any functions right now there. But the question is, let's say I declare two variables, a equals 10 and b equals 5, for example, right? What if I want to call that multiply function with these two variables, right? So I could, first of all, I want to understand where the current path for Python is. So if I say print or import sys, right? So these are some system libraries that allow you to understand how to configure some basic properties of Python, right? So I'm going to now print sys.path. And sys.path is going to show me all the places in which Python is going to look for a module or some reusable file, right? So if I run that, you're going to see that there's a number of places where it's going to look for packages and files, right? And I could add my Python file there, but rather I want to have it in a little bit of a more customized place right now. It's in my, as we saw it, it's in my desktop, right? So desktop math. So what I'm going to do is type it, get the location of where my file is, where I put it, and I'm going to add it to the path where Python looks for modules, right? So I can do that with sys.path.append, and I'm going to pass the folder again that I got from the file where I placed the file. So I'm going to run that, and then I could print again syspath. Let's do that again to make sure that it was added at the end. So if I run that, you're going to see now it's there included. So any code that I put in this folder now, it's going to be Python is going to find it. I still need to import it, but this is the first step to find reusable code. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to import. And remember, I need to import the name of the file, right? So it's operation. I'm going to do operation here. And once I run that, I notice that it ran fine. It worked. And then I can do something like operation dot multiply and pass a comma b, which were declared here at the above. And when I run that, I notice that the output is 50, right? So I'm able to reuse a function that I placed in a file somewhere else with variables that I've been declaring here on this notebook. As you can see, the advantage of doing this is that you can have functions that you create that are very specific, very well developed, or functions that other people developed, and then you can import them without having to copy and paste the code, right? So ideally, you want to avoid copying and paste the same code over and over again, because you could have slightly different versions. Let's say if I were to copy this function instead of calling it, let's say I were to go to this file and copy this function in my notebook, right? I could have done it here. I could have defined it here, but then what if one day, I add some other logic here? For whatever reason, my business required me to, for example, um, multiply this by 1,000 or something for some business reason that I'm, making it up. But in this case, but in the business, when working with business data, there are some conditions that sometimes happen. And yeah, right. So if I'm copying functions everywhere, I might lose track of what the right version is. Instead of the best approach is to create that module and then invoke it. Here, it gives consistency on and reusability on a single set of code, right? That's it for modules. I hope it makes sense. And in the next video, we're going to talk about packages.